Hello, everyone, and welcome to what is the latest edition of the Fireside with Founders and Leaders podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by Barry Shrier, who is CEO and founder of Giant Health. Giant Health are a community of people within the healthcare and health tech world who all get together as part of some of their flagship events, as well as an online community to share ideas, innovate, and really make a difference in the world. I'm thrilled that we got to talk about all the things that they've been doing, as well as Barry's career to date. We got to talk about some of his sort of things he's been doing to tackle climate change and really make a difference on the environment and the world. I really hope you all enjoy this one. So kick back, grab yourself a cup of tea, and check it out.
Hello, Barry, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rupert. Hi. It's great to be here. So thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
No, me too. We were just saying off air. It's a beautiful spring day. As anyone who's watching this will be able to see where you are at the moment, the right side of spring, as we were saying.
Absolutely. I think my prayers for good weather have been finally answered.
Yeah, finally. Although don't say that. I think the rain clouds are probably going to come later. But good for the gardeners, as they say.
Absolutely. Yeah. A good day for ducks and daffodils.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, Barry, it'd be great to get a bit of an overview because you've done so much in your time on this wonderful planet that we live in. So it'd be good to get a bit of an overview in terms of some of your background, some of the things that you've been up to. So if you could give the listeners and watchers a bit of a synopsis as to sort of where you've come from and where you are now, and we'll dive straight into all the things you've been doing.
Sure. Yeah. And once again, Rupert, it's great to be in contact with you. And thank you very much for the opportunity. So, of course, obviously, my name is Barry Shrier. And naturally, as you can hear, I'm American. However, I have lived all my adult life in the UK. And so this is home for me. My wife is English. Our kids grew up here, so they speak English. And so my background is essentially as a tech entrepreneur. I have successfully designed and launched technology innovation businesses, scaled them internationally, and successfully sold them. So I've done that in the telecoms sector. I launched a wireless internet telecoms proposition before the Wi-Fi spectrum was licensed for commercial purposes in the UK, and then grew that and sold that. And I also launched an international group of engineering businesses in the clean tech sector. Clean tech, of course, is the, if you will, industry term about technology businesses that are addressing global warming and climate change. I would suggest that we should take steps to address global warming and climate change. Whether it is man-made or not doesn't really matter. My view is that it's not very clever burning fossil fuels for all sorts of reasons. So I launched a group of businesses that was the Liberty electric car group of companies addressing global warming and climate change. We were creating carbon reduction solutions for the transport industry. Transport is about a quarter of carbon emissions worldwide. And then most recently, I have been applying whatever entrepreneurial skills I might have to the health sector. I'm the founder of Giant Health, which is an international community of healthcare tech innovation people focusing on developing new innovations in healthcare to improve the delivery of healthcare, saving lives, reducing pain and suffering. So that's a very, very short summary of some of the things I've done in my career.
The short version, indeed. So there's loads of stuff that we can dive into there. And it's really, really great to see that a lot of the stuff that you've done has been working towards having some sort of positive impacts on, I suppose, the planet, humankind, whatever it might be. So what is it that drives you, though, to sort of do all the things you've done? Because as you say, you're a tech entrepreneur. I consider you perhaps a serial entrepreneur in terms of the fact that you've done so many different things in your time. But what gets you out of bed in the morning to keep doing the things you do, Barry?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll be honest with you, it absolutely has to have that impact, so to speak. It has to be cause related to be motivating for me. And I know it's a very trite thing to say, but the money is not nearly as interesting as the contribution that one hopefully can make. And I think there's probably been a million studies in psychology and psychiatry and so forth about how happiness doesn't come from having a pile of cash or lots of houses and boats. It comes from helping other people and having friendships, and all those studies about those communities. What are they called? The blue communities or whatever, the regions around the world where people live a very long life, and naturally living a healthy life makes a difference. But that social aspect and having a meaningful life is so much more interesting and rewarding. So to answer your question, yeah, it has to have it has to be impactful, and healthcare naturally is, I suppose, the most, if not one of the most noble industries in the world. People dedicating their lives quite explicitly to helping others, and so that's extremely motivating. Healthcare certainly has loads of challenges in every country worldwide, and I'm extremely happy and delighted to be involved in, I hope, making my small, humble contribution to healthcare by way of what we're doing. And then earlier in my career, the chapter working in the clean tech sector, which I'm still peripherally involved in. Like I said, you could argue until the sun goes cold, is global warming happening or not on a long-term basis, like a geological basis? And the Earth gets warmer and colder over a wide variety of cycles. Some we understand, some we don't understand. And whether the Earth is getting warmer over a geological time frame right now or not, we don't know. Whether the Earth is getting warmer because we're burning fossil fuels or not, we don't know. There's a lot of evidence out there. But is burning fossil fuels creating cancerous poisons? Yes. And so, do elderly people that have predisposition to respiratory illnesses in cities, are they negatively affected by cars and trucks driving around in those cities burning petrol and diesel fuel? Yes. So would it be clever to reduce the burning of fossil fuels across all societies worldwide? Yes. So lots of reasons to do things like that as well.
Yeah, it's got to be having some sort of positive impact. And I think, like you say, there's always an argument on either side of these things, but I think there's no denying that there's got to be something that has to happen, because the way we're living at the moment is ultimately having a negative impact on a lot of people's health, as you've said, but also the planet as well.
Yes. We certainly want to be careful, though, don't we? We want to be careful and not be too kind of, rich nation elitist about this. It would not be correct to say to the billions of people living around the world who don't have central heating or plumbing in their houses and don't yet have access to cars or motorbikes, well, you can't have what we have had for the past 100 years. So our challenge is to help figure out how to deliver the services to everybody worldwide in a carbon neutral or carbon negative way, rather than saying, we have delighted in the Industrial Revolution and trashed the world, but you shouldn't be able to do the same.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always the real sort of challenge, is, as you say, making sure there's that balance. Even things over here, if we look at it, people still need to heat their houses, and people still need to get to and from places as they go about their lives. So it's all about trying to revolutionize that change so that we can make things better, rather than saying it's terrible, it's all inherently evil. No, not necessarily. That's not necessarily the case. It's all about making a positive change.
Exactly. For example, I absolutely love bicycling to the local train station, and when I'm in London, bicycling around central London. And so a very tiny behavioral change compared to what I did, say, for example, 20 years ago, and by no means whatsoever a step backwards.
And so I want to talk to you a bit more about your time sort of founding Liberty, because that's obviously something you're really passionate is sort of trying to create this positive environment and world that we're sort of living in, and making those sort of incremental changes, and by creating a company that reduces ultimately carbon emissions by creating sort of vehicles that will help towards that. is a great thing. Now, interestingly enough, you chose, in terms of your market, specifically the Chinese market, which certainly in the Western world, in the media, we always hear sort of, China bad, throwing out lots of like carbon emissions. And so certainly I'd imagine there was a real sort of desire and need for it, but China's also super innovative in some of the things that they do out there. So what was the reason that you chose that market first and foremost, and tell us a little bit more about the business?
Yeah, of course. So like I said, I have been very strongly motivated about the, whatever you want to call it, the cause relating to global warming and climate change, the ignorant situation we're in right now, burning fossil fuels. And so I wanted to be directly involved in that. I commissioned a group of graduate students here in the UK to help me with a lot of research to identify some of the major themes in society worldwide relating to global emissions of burning fossil fuels and the impact of that, and exploring what we might as mere mortals be able to do about it. And so we developed a lot of propositions revolving around the transport sector, which, like I said, is about a quarter of carbon emissions worldwide. One of the leading causes of carbon emissions worldwide is the cement industry. And I love everybody who works in the cement industry, and with respect, but that was just a bit too boring for me personally to get involved in. And so we chose transport because, it's big, it's growing, demand for transport worldwide is growing, and it is a significant sector in terms of consuming carbon fuels and ripe for innovation. All of this, by the way, was way before Tesla was launched, for example. I know the founder of Tesla personally, Martin Eberhard, who obviously was the founder of Tesla and then partnered with Elon Musk very early in that journey. So this was a little bit before Tesla. And what we realized was that there are core engineering themes which lead to extreme, how do you say it? It's easy to burn fossil fuels for transport. Coal, oil, diesel fuel, refined petrol are outrageously energy dense. And that's, of course, because they represent many millions or tens of millions of years of sunlight being trapped by forests, many millions of years ago and stored in the ground. So that energy density is unbelievably convenient for us, but it's a problem for the environment and quite possibly for our species in the future. So some of the biggest challenges relate to the energy density issue regarding transport. So we focused on creating new energy storage solutions, for example, battery technology, and then software and hardware stack issues in electric vehicles. So that was the background of it. Launched those businesses in the UK. And to answer your question directly, focusing on the Chinese market, because healthcare in China is very much a concern of central government in Beijing. And they recognize naturally that health is wealth, as you say. And so they have an obligation to concern themselves with the health of their society. And that is directly related to the polluting aspect of burning fossil fuels. So yes, the Chinese nation is building and burning a lot of coal-fired power stations, like many countries around the world, but they are concerned, and therefore there is a lot of appetite there for figuring out how to reduce carbon emissions, especially in transport. Yeah, that was one of the reasons why we targeted China as commercial partners.
Nice. And you went through quite a journey with the business overall, and eventually up until your exit where you sort of sold. So what was it? Was it always a plan to sort of build the business and sell it, or were you just sort of going on the journey? How did your mind sort of work? Because I think that's a really interesting sort of prospective thing to look at, of people like you as founders and entrepreneurs. Of, do you sort of go into it with the mindset of, I want to get to X, Y, Z, and there's always this exit plan at the end, or or was it more sort of free moving in the early days and it became that later on as you started to grow?
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you, Rupert. It's a very good question. I am primarily a tech entrepreneur, therefore I am launching businesses almost exclusively with exit strategies in mind from before launching the businesses. It's just, I guess, the nature of the best commercial return opportunities as an entrepreneur. And so we founded the Liberty Group of businesses with a explicit exit in mind, if that answers your question. And we felt like, well, looking at the transport industry as a whole, it's probably not too dissimilar from an awful lot of other industries, which I don't necessarily have expertise in. In other words, you have large global companies. By definition, the larger the business, the more the dynamics within the business change. Eric Schmidt, the former chairman of Google, used to always stand up on stage and say, well, look, we're too big to be innovative. We can only innovate by buying innovation. And that's not unusual at all, is it? I think in very large global enterprise environments, it's quite hard to say to your boss, look, can you give me $10 million and I'm going to launch a new venture within this company. And the odds are extremely high it's going to go bust, but we're going to learn a lot of really cool stuff. That's just not natural, I don't think, as a activity and discussion within global corporates. Therefore, that's what happens. That's what startups do. And we're the ones that bet our house on things and run the risk of, losing our house, which isn't natural in very large organizations. So therefore, what you have, obviously, is this traditional ecosystem within industries of large companies recognizing that innovation comes from buying small companies. And therefore, that was our goal from, before we started.
And it was super successful in terms of the sort of the exit from everything that I've seen. And you eventually sold to Green Automotive. So I'm imagining, obviously, that was it the case that obviously it was an attractive proposition for them first and foremost, but were there other things that you were looking at when you were sort of looking at that sale and potential other potential suitors for the sale of the business?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Thank you for that. There's always challenges, aren't there? When is the timing right? And I would say from my own entire career in business, there's that old phrase, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I would say a bird in the hand is worth about 8 million in the bush. And I was just wondering the other day, who's the founder of Snapchat? And I don't know how Snapchat is doing these days, but am I not correct that years and years ago, Snapchat was getting off the ground? And was it Facebook who said, we'll give you 3 billion? And he said no. And that, of course, got the entire tech industry, in a frenzy. Saying, well, what does he know? And what conversations has he maybe had with Goldman Sachs, which no one else knows about? How is it that he thinks he's potentially worth a lot more than 3 billion? And I don't know what has happened with Snapchat. Do you? But
I'm not down with the kids enough to know whether they're using it. I think TikTok happened. I think that's probably what sort of killed it. I'm assuming people still use Snapchat, but you don't hear much about it in the market. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know if the founder had a larger than 3 billion exit after saying no to Facebook, but it doesn't make sense to me to say no if someone's offering you 3 billion, unless you have 6 billion in debt. And in, for example, aerospace and especially satellite technology, there's that old joke, how do you make $1 billion in satellite industry? Well, you start with 2 billion. And so going back to answer your question more directly, we were ambitious to achieve an exit, and we had an extremely strong opportunity in growing the partnership with Green Automotive in America, and therefore we simply thought that was the best thing to do. And all of our founding investors got a hugely above average return on their investment, which is naturally something we're proud of and an important part of the journey as well.
Nice. And then you moved into your current position in terms of working with Giant Health and creating that. So you spoke earlier a bit more about sort of what you're doing for Giant Health and basically creating an international community for health tech innovators, anyone who's in the healthcare, health tech space to get together and create amazing products that are going to help people ultimately. I'm assuming that you were sort of passionate about, again, helping people, hence the fact getting into that sort of space to create a community that people can really come together and innovate in.
Yes. Yeah, well, absolutely. And so after the Liberty Electric Cars group of companies, the engineering group that I put together and exited, after that exit, you have this, whatever you want to call it, the entrepreneurial situation where, now you have all the money you need for the rest of your life, all the money your children need for the rest of their life and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of naively thought about retirement, which all my friends laughed about because, of course, that's a really stupid idea. My dad worked until he was 79 years old and absolutely loved his work and found that, quite satisfying and healthy. So at the time, I had all this free time and, not anything in particular to do. And I was just lucky to be able at that time, with all that free time, to help my mother, who at the time was 87 years old, look after my father, who at the time was 91 years old. And I didn't know this. I think everybody in the world knew this except me, which is that, if you're looking after a 91-year-old, you're engaging extremely heavily with the healthcare sector.
Yeah.
Living with my mom, helping her look after my 91-year-old dad. We had doctors coming to the house like every day, nurses coming to the house. And it was embarrassing, but we decided to make a joke out of it. We run first name terms with the ambulance drivers in our town because they were calling on my dad so often. Like, oh, it's John. He likes tea with 1 sugar and things like that. And
they were really invested and they got to know you at least. There's some positives on that. Good people.
Well, exactly. And, I just realized what, again, I'm sure everyone in the world knew already except me, having not had any engagement with the healthcare sector previously. And of course, the healthcare sector is by far the most noble industry in the world. And all these people who are dedicating their lives to improving well-being, and doctors, nurses, hospital managers, community care workers, they're all saving lives every day. They're building and putting back together broken babies, and they're reducing pain. And it's just phenomenal, isn't it? It's absolutely phenomenal. So I was extremely lucky to, be with my father at the last chapter of his life. And he lived until he was 92 because of healthcare. And he lived at home because of healthcare. Yeah. And he lived comfortably without pain because of the genius of science, modern science, and healthcare. So I said to myself after he passed away, my mom was okay, and I came back to England. I said, well, look, if I do have any entrepreneurial skills or capability, I'd like to commit them to the healthcare sector. So that's kind of what led to the launching of Giant Health. Giant is an acronym. It stands for Global Innovation and New Technology. And we're a community proposition. I'm not an expert in life sciences. I don't have a medical degree. I haven't been a doctor, but I wanted to do whatever I could from where I come from, which is tech innovation, to contribute to the healthcare sector. So, Giant's been going for 10 years now. And we're over 320,000 people in the community. Giant is a platform. It's a community proposition. Yeah. And our strap line is that we serve everybody whose business is healthcare, tech, and innovation.
Perfect. There's loads of people that you can certainly be serving and helping. And you've got your events that you host as well. I think you're back in person in London this year.
That's right.
In December.
Yeah. So the cornerstone of what we do are face-to-face events, which everybody tells us they love and value. So the pandemic naturally threw us for a little bit of a wobbly, so we did virtual events for a while, which actually are not very interesting or enjoyable for most everyone. but bless companies like Zoom for capitalizing on them. And we now are back to, bringing thousands of people together in face-to-face meetings so we can all share viruses and grow some herd immunity or something like that. But we're mainly famous because we do a great big annual event, which the Financial Times newspaper refers to as Europe's largest, most valuable healthcare tech event.
So you've had some really great press coverage from the FT talking about some of the amazing work that you're doing. And obviously you mentioned the fact that COVID sort of came along. I think anyone you'd have been living literally on another planet if you weren't aware of everything that's been going on over the last few years. But and it changed the face of sort of how we see sort of the healthcare system, certainly in the Western world and in the UK. And from everything that I see across the globe, ultimately. So that's really led to lots of innovation happening in the sector. And it's actually, from everything that I've seen, again, brought the sector to the forefront of people's minds, specifically with tech. And I see a lot of investment happening in health tech and healthcare companies, which is phenomenal and fantastic in every way, shape or form.
Yes.
I was really interested to know, in terms of, you're obviously really close to a lot of these companies and to a lot of the investors and things that are people that are out there, they're sort of throwing some of this money around. What trends are you seeing at the moment in the industry of things that are being heavily invested in and positively talked about, and where do you see it all going?
Yeah, well, thank you, Rupert. I mean, healthcare, of course, is an extremely large industry in every country worldwide and growing. I'm not aware of any country anywhere in the world where they say, let's aim to provide less healthcare in the future rather than more healthcare. So that's, if you will, your starting point. The demand is endless. And that's a good industry to be in from a commercial perspective. And then other issues, unfortunately, are that, as societies become richer, new healthcare problems come up, like obesity, type 2 diabetes. And the fact that we're all living longer means that, in the final chapter of most people's lives, they have additional illnesses related to aging. And so, once again, this creates more demand for healthcare services, which is difficult financially for every culture. So that's the foundation. And then on top of that, you don't have unlimited resources in any country to deliver more healthcare services. But the good news is that technology holds out the promise, which is already, verified, that with tech innovation, clinicians can deliver better healthcare services at lower cost. And so, that's a really good opportunity, isn't it, for society? And I think a really good example of that is so-called telemedicine. And we've had the telephone now since, Alexander Graham Bell in the mid-19th century invented it. But we didn't have telemedicine. And, there's a lot of reasons why 20 years ago you couldn't telephone your doctor and have a telephone consultancy instead of going to visit the doctor in person. But it's better to start with a telephone consultancy. That saves time for you, saves time for the doctor, cuts costs, reduces the likelihood of you needing to go to the doctor's office and share all of your illnesses with everybody else in the waiting room. So that's, of course, an extremely simplistic example. But technology is enabling people to achieve better healthcare outcomes at lower cost. So you have all these things, how do you say it? Combining to create the healthcare environment. And then on the technology adoption side, you have big challenges. And often I'm invited, for example, to give presentations at conferences, give a keynote speech or whatever. And in those, I like to joke about the fact that, I'm glad my GP doesn't poke me with some widget she bought from a startup yesterday. And, it's a joke, but it's true. And it's about the issues that healthcare is gladly and happily. Healthcare is a conservative, evidence-based, science-based, slow-moving industry. It cannot adopt new technologies quickly, like, for example, Formula One racing or the fashion industry can quickly adopt new tech. It was like, 15 years ago, wasn't it, that they were putting little RF microchips in T-shirts in shops. And right now, the average hospital gown for a patient does still not yet have RFID chips in the gown measuring the vitals of the patient, which could have been done 15 years ago. So it's slow moving, it's evidence-based, which is good news. But that means there's this permanent challenge between tech innovation and the adoption of tech innovation and the conservative, slow-moving, evidence-based nature of healthcare. So that's what we're doing. Is we're addressing that. We're trying to help innovators cross that chasm. So that's the background. Pardon me, that was a little bit wordy. But to answer your question directly, there's, of course, amazing new innovation happening outside of health, which has outrageous opportunity and likelihood of successful, valuable impact in health. Of course, today and this week, everyone's talking about Chat GPT, and naturally, the underlying issues with that are AI and machine learning. All of these things are advancing exponentially, and the applications there in healthcare are vast. As an example, an awful lot of the diagnosis in healthcare boils down to pattern recognition. And once trained, machines can do pattern recognition much better and faster and at lower cost than humans can. Yep. And that's an uncontroversial statement. So pattern recognition, based on machine learning and AI, holds out the promise of vast improvement in diagnosis in healthcare. Diagnosing that you might have cancer 5 years from now, not diagnosing that you have cancer right now.
Yeah.
And so that's quite interesting, isn't it? So that's one example. And depending on how many hours you want to sit here chatting, I can give loads of exciting examples. In fact, we should meet up and go out for a beer on a sunny afternoon and discuss this further.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I could sit here for hours, but I'm acutely aware that today we are relatively sort of time short. So all super interesting stuff, and I think it still blows my mind when you're talking about things whereby they can potentially start making diagnoses sort of 5 years early to predict the future. I mean, it's the stuff that sci-fi movies are made of.
Yes, very, very exciting, unbelievably exciting, and the opportunities as well, which is so important to democratize healthcare. So the provision of healthcare, of course, depends very much on the wealth of a nation and the wealth of a society. And in the developing world, these cultures absolutely do not have access to the type of healthcare services that we enjoy in rich countries. And that's unfortunate for society. And yet, for example, developments with smartphones, which billions of people have now, to be able to obtain diagnoses. Lots of companies that are, deploying smartphone technology, for example, to scan your eye and to very quickly identify health issues, or to listen to your voice and to identify health issues. And all this can be happening in the cloud, which is low cost. All this can be comparing what's happening with 5 million people around the world at low cost. All of this can be endless learning, which an individual doctor, of course, you cannot expect a doctor to read 800 new academic papers about their chosen area of expertise every month. Whereas, of course, in the cloud with machine learning and AI, all that can be happening in terms of the learning. And, this has been tried over there and it's not working. So let's not do that anymore. So that's very interesting, isn't it? So the democratization is such an incredibly exciting, powerful opportunity for the provision of healthcare around the world.
It's super exciting, and it's an amazing time to be alive with all of this sort of technological advancement that's happening around us. So I'm really, really interested to see some of the things that come out over the next sort of few years and how it's really going to help us.
No, absolutely. I mean, allegedly, it was a 5,000-year-old Chinese curse, the phrase, "May you live in interesting times." But I would prefer to view that as, a glorious greeting and a piece of content to relish in and to savor. We do live in interesting times, and I'd like to think that we live in extremely fortunate, interesting times, regarding tech. Naturally, there's an awful lot of, challenges. Every new technology brings problems as well as solutions. And there's a lot of nonsense conversations about robots replacing doctors. And that's not going to happen. I would hope that technology is already, and I hope technology will continue to empower doctors to be able to look after patients better, rather than of course, replace what clinicians and nurses, hospital and community care workers provide.
Exactly. I don't think I tend to agree with you. I think again, it comes back to that word of enabler, and that's what we should be using technology for, to enable us to do our jobs better and make lives better for everyone else around us.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, look, Barry, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you giving up your time today to chat to me, and I'm going to hold you to that beer and a conversation in the future. If people want to follow you, you're active on sort of social media, so you're on LinkedIn. They can sort of follow you there, find out a little bit more about what you're doing. Even just by googling your name, people will be able to find you. If they want to know a bit more about what you've been up to and what you're going to be up to in the future. So I'd implore people to go and do that, because you're in for hopefully an interesting journey and an interesting ride for what the future holds.
Well, Rupert, thank you. I've been delighted to have this conversation with you, and I certainly hope it's been interesting and worthwhile for your listeners. And so I do appreciate that. Thank you, Rupert. And I'd also like to add that I'd be extremely happy to share whatever expertise or experience I have had with any of your listeners. So if anybody is out there and has any questions, or is looking to raise money or launch a business, or any challenges in their organizations relating to tech and innovation and the crazy, scary roller coaster journey that entrepreneurs take, I'd be very, very happy to engage directly with any of your listeners. And I would like to encourage everyone just to reach out and make contact directly with me. My executive assistant, Olga, her contact details are on my LinkedIn profile. So I'd like to encourage everyone, please don't hesitate. Be happy to speak to anybody about whatever is on their mind.
Fantastically generous offer. Well, thank you again, Barry, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you. I'm grateful.